Chapter 5. Moses as the man of justice. Exodus chapter 2, verses 11 to 22. And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian, and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together, and he said to him that did the wrong, Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, Who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh, and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water, and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them, and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, How is it that you are come so soon today? And they said, An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us, and watered the flock. And he said unto his daughters, And where is he? Why is it that ye have left the man? Call him that he may eat bread. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah his daughter. And she bare him a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land. Exodus chapter 2, verses 11 to 22. We are now told that Moses, when he was grown, or literally, when he became great, went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burdens. Verse 11. The meaning is that he separated himself from the palace to identify himself with the Hebrews. This is stressed by Hebrews chapter 11, verses 24 to 26. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. We must not sentimentalize this text. Moses did not choose his natural mother over his adopting mother. He may well have retained to his death a strong regard for both. The choice was rather religious. He identified himself with the covenant people of God. The pleasures of sin is thus a phrase which does not refer to a variety of actions, but rather contrasts a covenant life in God against a covenant-breaking life lived in terms of man's own law as an ostensibly autonomous individual. Because he was in a real sense outside the life of both Israel and Egypt, Moses apparently had given himself to the study of both faiths. He saw thus his roots in the covenant God and his people. He also understood the messianic goal and kingdom is the process as well as the atonement, perhaps that is, the reproach of Christ. Moses, by his birth and upbringing, was both of Israel and of Egypt, and yet aliens to both. By leaving the palace to live apart from Pharaoh's men, Moses isolated himself from the Egyptians, without, however, breaking with them in any dramatic fashion. But an incident occurred to more fully separate him from both Israel and Egypt. He saw an Egyptian, probably an overseer, beating a Hebrew. In anger, Moses intervened, and in the struggle killed the Egyptian. The body was then hidden in the sand. Apparently, the only eyewitness was the Hebrew. The next day, however, Moses saw one Hebrew assaulting or beating another. The man may have been a Hebrew used as a taskmaster by the Egyptians, not an uncommon practice. On the previous day, Moses had looked this way and that way before he had killed the Egyptian, and had seen no man. He had realized, apparently, as he began to fight the overseer, that if the man lived, he would have Moses killed. Pharaohs tolerated no interference with their orders. The guilty Hebrew, when Moses intervened to ask, "Why do you smite your fellow Hebrew?" turned insolently to Moses to ask two questions which were actually accusations. First, "Who made thee a prince and judge over us?" And second, "Are you going to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Two things were at once apparent. First, by virtue of being the son of Pharaoh's daughter, Moses was in fact a prince judge. The Hebrew man, in effect, denies that Moses is acceptable to Hebrews as a prince judge. He is to them a foreigner. Second, Moses' killing of the Egyptian is known, and the Hebrews were not viewing it favourably. Had the popular reaction been strongly favourable to Moses, the man would not so readily have shown contempt for Moses. He knew, however, that Moses was now rejected by both Egypt and Israel. In Stephen's words in Acts, we have another account of this episode. "And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds. And when he was fully 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him, and avenged him that was oppressed, and smote the Egyptian. For he supposed his brethren would have understood how that God, by his hand, would deliver them, but they understood not. And the next day he showed himself unto them as they strove, and would have set them at one again, saying, Sirs, your brethren, why do ye wrong one to another? But he that did his neighbour wrong thrust him away, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge over us? Wilt thou kill me as thou didst the Egyptian yesterday? Then fled Moses at this saying, and was a stranger in the land of Midian, where he begat 2 sons. Acts chapter 7, verses 22 to 29. We are told 3 things about Moses, namely that he was learned, that he was mighty in words, and that he was also mighty in deeds. He was thus a man of power. We are told that Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known, verse 14. The root of Moses' fear was religious. He was trying to restore Israel into covenant faithfulness and to deliver them, but he found himself rejected when he staked his life and future on saving a Hebrew. He thus had no place in either Egypt or Israel, and hence he fled. He knew himself to be a stranger to both Israel and Egypt, and later, as a stranger in Midian, he named his first son Gershom, meaning a stranger there. Ger, a stranger, Sham, there. Moses fled to Midian, where he rested by a well. The 7 daughters of a man of Midian were there to water the sheep, but male shepherds drove them away. These were the daughters of Jethro, which means His Excellence, and was probably a title as a nomadic chief. He is also called Ruel in verse 18 and Hobab in Numbers chapter 10, verse 29. Ruel may mean a friend or a shepherd of God. He is called in verse 16 the priest of Midian, the word translated as priest being the Hebrew Kohen. Kohen can mean priest or chief. Jethro was thus leader of a small nomadic band. Perhaps because of his true faith, he was isolated and limited in power. The fact that other Midianite shepherds treated his daughters badly indicates a disrespect. However, the fact that the girls were able to work with their small bands of sheep without being raped by these men indicates that Jethro still commanded a little power. In Egypt, Moses faced death for his action, which was based on his sense of justice in seeing a man unjustly beaten. Such beatings of work levies were, in those days, often murderous. His sense of justice had not abandoned him. He now intervened to protect the girls and to draw water for them. The father, being otherwise busy at the time, was surprised when they returned early. When he learned that an Egyptian had helped the girls, he insisted that someone go to that nearby well and bring the man to dinner. As an Egyptian who was well dressed and with some indications of his palace heritage, Moses probably intimidated the shepherds whom he drove back from the well. To oppose a man of rank could be dangerous. Jethro could have been motivated by both natural gratitude and a desire to befriend a prominent Egyptian. Moses' history soon became known to Jethro, and Moses was content to live with him and herd sheep. He was given Zipporah, Jethro's daughter, as a wife. Zipporah means bird or little bird, although Youngblood translates it as ladybird. The child, Gershom, also sometimes Gershon, is of interest in a double sense. First, Moses uses that name to set forth the fact that he is a stranger to Israel, Egypt, and Midian. The name indicates his isolation and loneliness. Second, the name can also be seen as an affirmation of faith. In Genesis chapter 46, verse 11, we are told that Levi's firstborn son was named Gershon. Moses thus recalls his roots. Like Levi, he is the head of a great beginning, and against all hope, he uses a name to invite a comparison of himself with Levi. Midian was an area outside the main lines of trade and communication. It was thus a safe hiding place, especially with an obscure leader of a small band of nomadic herders. Moses was now a sheep herder. He had once been a prince and a judge as well, because a prince had legal powers. His intervention in both cases, between the Egyptian and the Hebrew, and between the two Hebrews, had an element of legality because of his status. The problem, however, was that the overseers of labour levies had great powers and were doing Pharaoh's bidding. Whatsoever the cause of justice Moses might have pled, the fact remains that he had intervened in Pharaoh's key area, the royal construction projects and his labour levies. This was an offence against Pharaoh. Moses had no assigned jurisdiction over Hebrews, and his action was seen as lawless. The Hebrew reads that Moses struck the Egyptian and the man died. God called Moses to be his lawgiver. The training of Moses as a prince of Egypt was a schooling in political justice, that is, in statist power, in the use of forced labour levies, racism in laws, and a disregard for the common peasant. In his fight for life, Moses again encounters injustice at the well. He was thus given a radical schooling by God in humanistic law. His allegiance to both Egypt and Israel, to the palace and to the slave worker, and to all man-centered visions of righting and justice was thoroughly shattered. If we cannot be separated from man's ideas of justice, we cannot be used by God. Moreover, men are not ready to receive justice unless they see its source as the covenant God. An important aspect of this story is the rejection of Moses by Israel. Both now and later, Israel was an unhappy nation with respect to Moses, treating him with disrespect, blaming him for their failures in courage, and rebelling against him. Moses came to see the sins of Israel clearly. This was a necessary part of his schooling. A persistent aspect, especially of modern man, is his belief that the underdog, the minority group, the oppressed, the downtrodden, the persecuted race or nationality is the virtuous one, and its superiors and or oppressors are the evil ones. They are unwilling to see evil on both sides and to seek the good in one only, God. Matthew chapter 19, verse 17. This proneness of men to identify the goods with one side or another leads to the perversion of justice. Justice can only be identified with God. Then all men and all groups of men must be summoned to follow justice and serve it. It was an essential part of Moses' schooling that he see Israel, as well as Egypt, as a sinning people. To have served Israel rather than God would have been evil